All right, this is a video in the CS140 class about product.cpp. In this video, I'm specifically talking about the print and calculate product functions and another helper function that I made called cancel. If you need help on any of the other functions, please see the other video I made about product.cpp that goes over all of those. Also, I'm assuming that you already read the lab write-up, and I'm not going to go over anything that has already been said in the lab write-up, including what numerator and denominator mean and other things about the data structure. So first off, let's talk about this helper function that's not really listed as a function in the lab write-up, but I think is useful. So both print and calculate product, you are required to cancel factors in both your numerator and denominator. So the cancel function is something that I decided to write so I wouldn't have to put that code in twice. So what cancel does is if I have a numerator, let's say this is my numerator vector and this is my denominator vector, it's going to cancel stuff exactly like the lab write-up talks about, just in this function only. Okay, so let's say this is the numerator and this is the denominator. And this is what is in each of the vectors. Let's say this is 0, 2, 0, 1, and this is 1, 1, 3, and 0. So when I'm going to call the cancel function, I'm going to look at these vectors and see, okay, in the numerator, do I have a number at a certain index? And at that index, I also have a number in the denominator, a non-zero number. So right here, when I equals, the index equals 0, 1, 2, 3, at I equals 3, I have a 2 here, so this really represents 3 times 3 in the numerator. And in the denominator, I also have a 3. I want to cancel these guys out. And what I should have left is a 0 in the denominator and a 1 in the numerator. Note that I skipped over this index, even though there's a non-zero number in the denominator, because there's nothing to cancel. So this represents a 2 down here. I'm going to move over. At I equals 4, there's nothing to cancel, so it's going to look like this mathematically. 4 times 4 times 4. And this represents a 5. So mathematically, if I'm writing this out and canceling by hand, this is how I would cancel. And what you will do is iterate through your numerator and denominator and just use simple subtraction. See if the index has a non-zero number in both the numerator and denominator, figure out which number is bigger, and then do subtraction. So then, when you go to print, you will need to cancel. So that's the first thing you do, is cancel here. Note that when you do cancel, since this is a helper function and it wasn't defined in your product.h file, it's not a part of the product class, cancel will need to pass the numerator and denominator as parameters to cancel, because otherwise it wouldn't be able to see it. We're also editing the numerator and the denominator this way, and you'll need to have some way of accessing these. So what you'll need to do is, for cancel's parameters here, you will need to pass these by reference. So cancel passes the numerator and denominator by reference. So remember, when we pass by reference, just like I said in the other video, you'll need to use the ampersand symbol as syntax. When you actually call cancel inside print, you don't need to use the ampersand. The ampersand is used in the function definition itself up here. If you need some review, take a look at the notes and take a look at the last video, because I also talk about pass by reference a little bit in there with the resize helper function. Okay, so after we call cancel, we need to split printing up into two different sections. So first, we're going to just think about printing the numerator. So let's pretend that this is my numerator vector. Say I have 0, 0, 0, 2, 0, 1. So what this should look like is I equals 0, I equals 1, I equals 2, I equals 3, I equals 4, and I equals 5. These are, I stands for index. Take a moment and think about what should be the very, very, very first number printed out. What should that be? It should be, so pause your screen a little bit if you want to think about this. About to tell you the answer. It should be a 3. So I'm going to print out a 3 because the very first non-zero number in my vector is at I equals 3. So I'm multiplying 3 2 times. And then I am multiplying by 5. So when you print the numerator, the tricky part about this is you can't just see out I and then the asterisk as you loop through the vector. And why is that? Would you have a little extra asterisk at the end there? Yes, you would. So how are we going to deal with this? How to not have a little extra asterisk at the end? What I would do is have what I call a loner kind of print statement, where you just print the very, 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 very first number that you want to print. BBZ talked about this in class about using a bool right here to figure out if you're at the first number or not. Then after you print out the very, very first factor, you can pair everything else off. And instead of printing this way, we are going to print the very first number, and then after that, print in pairs of the asterisk and then I. And you can just pair everything off after the first number, which makes printing the numerator a lot easier. Then you will print the denominator. And is that easier? Yes, it actually is. You can start printing in pairs immediately here. And that pair should consist of the divide symbol and then the I. So think to yourself, why are we guaranteed to be able to print in pairs here? There's a special case in the write-up that says why we can do that. So go back and look at your notes, figure out why, and notice that there is a special case. I'm not going to say exactly what you need to do, but there's a special case when the entire print numerator vector is all zeros. You're going to do something. And that means, because of the special case, you will always have something to print in the numerator. And then you can just print in pairs in the denominator after that. So that is the print function. Next, I'm going to talk about the calculate product function. Calculate product. This is the only non-void function in your whole lab. It's going to return a double. So in this function, make sure to read the lab write-up so you'll understand what I'm talking about. You'll need to call the cancel function again, and then after you call the cancel function, this is where you finally actually use just plain old multiplication and division in your code. So everything up to here, and multiply number, and divide number, and multiply factorial, divide factorial, you are never actually using multiplication or division anywhere in your code. You are just changing stuff in your vector. So here we actually use multiplication and division. Finally. And this will not work unless you cancel your terms first. So again, this is the cancel function. You don't need to rewrite it. Call what we did over here. If you don't do that, your multiplication is going to be too large. As you have read in the lab write-up, if you get up to like 13 factorial or 15 factorial, something like that, your computer can't handle it. So you need to cancel first. And then after that, you can just do multiplication and division as simply as it sounds. Just think about how you would loop through these vectors and calculate up what the product should actually be and return it. So again, this is where you actually finally use just plain old normal math. And it's as simple as that. So again, this is a video about print, calculate product, and cancel. If you need any help on all the other functions, check out my other video.